Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Dance Diplomacy with Jonathan interview. And in this case, we're right here in the United States. We don't have to go beyond the borders to have some fascinating people to talk to. Rulan Tangen, the artistic director and a choreographer and a dancer who established Dancing Earth in California and New Mexico. And we were so thrilled to have Dancing Earth at the Battery Dance Festival at Battery Park in 2013, at which time we also were introduced to Micco, who we have here as well. This is going to be a very exciting and very enlightening conversation, I'm sure. And Rulan, I'd like to turn to you and bring us into the context of Dancing Earth, how Micco has interacted with you and with Dancing Earth and so forth.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think actually when we came to Battery Park Festival, which was then called Downtown Dance Festival, that might have been one of Micco's first performances. But I had known about Micco since he was younger than a teenager because I'd danced with his mom, actually. Micco, you want to just catch us up about that?
Yes, for sure, absolutely. So, Battery Dance Festival in downtown was my first experience with Dancing Earth as a performance, and so we did the small end of the summer intensive performance, which was kind of like a prelude, which was what we were building up to be presented at the Battery Dance Festival. So that was an amazing experience. But yes, I knew Rulan ever since I was a young kid. I was about 11. And my mother was a part of a contemporary dance company, and they were in the middle of a production called Tribe, and it was based out of Minneapolis. And so, even for me at the time, I was living in North Dakota, so I had to travel to go witness this, and it was such a cool thing to see such a large, grandiose production with beautiful costuming, beautiful song, beautiful dance, everything. Even the dancers themselves, of course, were indigenous, and so I was enthralled. I was totally amazed, and I thought that's something that I want to do someday. And of course, my mom was doing it, so why not follow in her footsteps?
Yeah, and I have a long ear for remembering and listening. So she was telling me I have these young sons, they're going to be the greatest dancers ever. So, years later when I made Dancing Earth, I was like, Darius, where are those boys? And Micco came in to integrate for Walking at the Edge of Water. That was the performance that we were so blessed for Native grandmothers, including Mari Mumford and Josephine Mandamin, who are from Anishinaabe Métis communities up there in Canada, to ask us to bring this theme of water to the people and to do it through our movements. And it was, I have to say, Jonathan, it was a real moment for me to come to New York, because that's where I had the majority of my career, from age 16 to 26. And then years later, I think 16 years later, to come back to the same city, which, it's a challenge to be a dancer there, but I was, blessed to be a dancer with Michael Mao and Perry Dance, and then to come back bringing something that felt so new and different, and to bring this ecological dance vision about water. And I remember we got there, and there was a beautiful company from France on stage, and I could feel the dancers kind of like get nervous. They hadn't been in that kind of scenario. And I said, you belong there. Your stories belong there. And that was after an all-night. We had to take an all-nighter, red eye. We were trying to save money on the flights. And not only do we just come to perform, but we also come to be in relationship with, the Native people of that area. And, we have a long relationship with the Lenape folks. But there was something really special that happened for Micco that was happening around the same time that was particularly significant for him. Do you want to talk about that, Micco?
Yeah, so there was a ceremony that was pretty epic in its scope, and also, of course, in history. So one of the first treaties that was ever signed between indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island and Europeans was between the Dutch and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And so there was a commemoration to honor, remember, and uphold that treaty, that agreement that they had between these peoples, where we would coincide, each one in the canoe, not interfering or overlapping into another one. So that was something that was really cool to be a part of and see happen, just as serendipity would be at that moment in time that I happened to be there as well. So it was a really, really amazing thing to be a part of, and also to have so much of myself involved, literally not only me as an individual, but also from our Six Nations of the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse of the Iroquois Confederacy are still here today. We are still alive. We are still dancing, and we are still providing the relationships that we have today that see us into the future.
I think that the fact that you mentioned there was a dance company from France on stage, and the Battery Dance Festival has traditionally been known as one of the most international dance festivals in New York. And of course, it's free to the public. And at this point is the longest running public dance festival in New York. But for us, having Dancing Earth, having Micco, having Rulan, having this water theme in our festival, it's like a homecoming in a way, and a reverence for the dance and culture that comes from this country and this land. So all credit to you both, and thank you for having reminded our audience in 2013 of the beauties of what existed here and exists now through your own work and your sort of proselytizing and educating American people about themselves and about the roots and about the indigenous cultures here. So Micco, how, your mother was the source of inspiration, obviously, but, young people fight against their parents. So somehow or other you, in rebellion, you ended up, creating your own identity as a dancer, as a performer, as a person in the arts field. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I can't commend my mom enough for doing is making sure that I had some type of connection or involvement with my indigenous culture. And so for me, that was powwow culture, which is something that was kind of generalized in the 1930s. It was the one thing that they would allow us as indigenous people to do all the way up until 1978, when the Native American Freedom of Religious Act finally came into play. Prior to that, the only time we were allowed to perform or dance or sing was for festivals or for the president or foreign dignitaries. And so for me, not even 7 years later after that happening, being able to uptake that and carry that knowledge, that culture into the future was something that was not taken lightly by my mom. Like I said, she made sure that I had the means to be able to stay connected, but also even more so, as you mentioned, the rebellious type, I took those influences that I have from within me. And of course, I grew up in this modern time. I watch MTV, I listen to the radio, I see, pop stars and music and things like that. And so those also influence my being and my expression. And so through dance, and that's what she told me was that in our dances, that is our ultimate source of freedom, of expression, of energy. And so there's nothing limiting you. There's nothing holding you back, especially if you let it go. And then that's something that you can really create positive energy from. And so what I did is I was taking things from contemporary dance, moonwalking, certain slides, MC Hammer dancing, and so those things became part of my expression, and they were part of my story. And it's undeniable, as much as we try to adhere to our traditional roots and cultures, it's undeniable that our culture has been influenced, has changed, and has evolved over time into the modern era.
I think artists have to be given the liberty to see things, to absorb things, to reprocess things. I mean, what would an artist do without a palette of everything around them? This is,
for sure,
your journey as an artist. I mean, on the other hand, we're living at a time when people will, be happy to pick you apart and say, oh, that's not authentic, or, you're appropriating, whatever. But I think each one of us has to just be true to yourself.
Sure.
And I love this idea of, how we influence each other, because even in this water work where Jonathan, you were mentioning like indigenous people from here, from this land, actually on stage, I created a microcosm of your international festival, because we had indigenous representation either on stage or the soundscape or various influences that was actually global, including a wonderful Maori choreographer from New Zealand. I think on stage we're representing indigenous lineages that go back all the way to Mexico, to Canada, to the US, and to Africa. And I've lost track of, there were quite a few people on stage, but really, a much wider diversity than one might think. But coming around to unify Not only what are the stories that we're carrying within us, but what is the story we want to tell together about water. And I have to say, like when we got the cheers, when we got a standing ovation, like to see New York, stand up for us, it meant it hit people in a way that wasn't about otherness and wasn't about like, oh, look at them, but to feel a connection. And I think that's a really important part of our work. And yeah, I kind of get chills when I'm thinking about it, but it was also what those grandmothers wanted when they offered those themes. They said, let this, let the dance bring change and transformation to the people everywhere, all the places that you go. And we ended up taking that work after New York to New Zealand, where there were Maori people who attended. And at the time they said they didn't know what hydrofracking was. But because we brought that into our performance, 1 month later, they were at a hydrofracking protest on the east coast of New Zealand. So that was a real direct example of advocacy and, what people might say, what might inspire activism, but it starts with this empathy and this connection with each other and with other elements of the planet. And then Micco, you were talking about your different influences. And I know that, especially in this COVID era, when we can't be together and dance, you've been doing all of us have been looking for different ways to connect, whether Jonathan, we were like inventing online performance forms, which Micco was a part of last year. But Micco, you're also doing some music. You talked about MTV, and I think it's Frank Wong, who's a young Lakota hip hop artist who's featured on MTV, and I think you're doing another collaboration with him. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, that was something that was an amazing part of my journey, even just up into and through, and even now, meeting Rulan and Dancing Earth, was that I was always constantly working these different avenues of my artistry, meaning I am a dancer, yes, but I'm not just a dancer. I am an artist. I express myself in many different ways, and that's what we have as artists, is this ability to tell stories. And what we see and what we experience, is literally a part of what becomes our modern story. And as I said, the culture moves forward, it evolves, and it becomes a part of everything that we know in its existence. And so Frank and I and Sam, my brother Sam Soji, we perform together all over the world, sharing our stories, our art in its most genuine form, because we very seldom let people tell our story for us. And so that was one thing that we loved, is that through our music, through our dance, through our art, we are able to tell exactly what we wanted to tell to the world, and they can appreciate it in that sense directly. And then, of course, if you're able to be there and witness it from us firsthand, we have that experience that we can also give you more in-depth understanding about what this comes from and what it means. And then also for us, especially as Indigenous people, no matter what we do, it's going to be Native. And so, like, whether I'm playing ping pong or if I'm making a new piece of t-shirt or something, the design, it's going to be Native. And so that's inherently something that I have to also be aware of, is that fine line of, like you said, like, what is appropriation, what is appropriate. And of course, in my with respect to my cultures, what I understand is, again, there's a time and a place for culture, for ceremony, and for traditions, but there's also a time and a place for social dances. And that's what we bring to the table, is these social community type of activities where we can share and learn and have a good time and celebrate together and share in positive energy, and understand that we are a part of each other's world. And that's undeniable now, especially more than ever. As Rulan mentioned, in times of COVID, we've definitely seen much more of these impacts in all of our worlds. And it's hard to say that I am just Native and I exist, period, without the rest of the world. Because again, as I mentioned, I'm aware of TV, I'm aware of music, I'm aware of cars, I have a cell phone. And so our worlds are always overlapping. We have so much to share and learn from each other. And of course, more than anything, appreciate from each other, especially as I don't know your story and you don't know mine until we sit down and really listen to each other and share. And so I think that's what we have.
I can tell I'd love to spend an evening with you and just, learn more. One of the things that's sort of emerging or you've sparked in my mind, both of you, is the fact that many cultures around the world, dance is not like a separate part of life. It's like cooking, being with family, dancing. There's a continuum, and you don't know where you start and stop any one of those activities. And I think that that's something that, in modern life and in contemporary practice of theater and dance, there is a separation to some extent, but I think we're trying to get back to this more primitive, more primal, more universal place of dance in life, where it doesn't have to be separated.
Yeah, well, I mean, Micco's part of a dancing family. I mean, he mentioned his brother dances, they actually dance together as a family and doing family hoop dance. I think you were one of the first families to do that because your mom was one of the first female hoop dancers. And anytime you're doing something new and the first time, there were just a few female hoop dancers when I met her. And it doesn't always come with an embrace right away. Like she had to really hold to her vision and then keep you guys involved. So, I mean, I've seen you eating and sewing and making things together as a family.
For sure.
And I think it kind of carries into your work now. I mean, one of the things that's happening for Dancing Earth as we move forward, but that's always been happening, is the company serves as a way to create community and uplift each other in leadership. Sometimes the leadership is starting to come back into Dancing Earth, but also the leadership in people's communities. So Micco, you're living in Minneapolis now with your family, and you're working at the Indian Center. And just like Jonathan said, I think you were hired for hoop dance, but you're also doing fitness, and I can't remember the other things, but it felt very integrative what you're doing over there.
Yeah. So that, something little bit known, but very plays well right into this moment what we were talking about is my mother, my brother, and myself. At one time, we were all AFA certified aerobics instructors. So that's the American Fitness Association. Something like that, excuse me. But anyway, so we were trained, and so we had the ability to teach athletic aerobics classes, and so we were doing kickboxing and all these other things, and dance and such like that, and Zumba even. And I was like, how come we aren't just doing our regular dance? As you mentioned, that was something that was a part of our regular day. Our every day was dancing, and so we started thinking about it more, and like the knowledge that I had acquired from the AFA certification and understanding, I just turned and I applied it to our traditional dance and our style of practicing, and it really does serve its purposes. As I mentioned, some of these things that we don't realize how intrinsic they really are. It's just natural for us, and it's ingenious, really, to think about when they say dance like nobody's watching. All right, so you don't necessarily understand what that really is until you try it. You start really feeling good within yourself. And for one thing, you're moving, your heart rate going up. For two, you're feeling good about yourself. It's positive energy. And in that moment, you're able to relieve yourself from any of those other stresses in the world. And in that moment, just be happy, just be positive. And so there's healing that happens in that moment. And of course, there's so much more that goes into that as we start exploring all the other different parts of our actual ceremonies. When they're actually being done, they're really emphasizing a specific point, but that can happen at any point of the day. And I think that's one of the things I definitely love, is that we have so much potential as humans, but also as community. We have the potential to change, to create energy, to move forward in the same direction on the same topic. So I think that's something that we can do with our dances, is definitely bring awareness to a certain topic, or also even get people moving literally in the same direction.
I went as far around the world to Konya, Turkey, for somebody to tell me that, in fact, we dancers are spiritual beings, because in our culture, we chose to pursue something that is not traditionally rewarded financially. It's insecure, and there's no guarantee that, being a great dancer is going to earn you a lot of respect either. So it's like, what do you really do? That could be a question when you say I'm a dancer. So in Konya, Turkey, the director of the Whirling Dervishes and Mystical Musicians of Konya, which was where Rumi, the Rumi Museum is located and stuff, he looked at me and he said, you and your dancers are spiritual beings. And I said, really? You think so? And he said, yeah, because in America, if you were interested in money or you were interested in prestige, you would have not chosen this career path. And it made me stop and think. And I think the two of you, in own practice, it's not about prestige, it's not about money, it's about fulfillment of some sort, your human spirit. So do you want to reflect on that at all, Micco?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of all this is going in together. I'm actually here right now at the Minneapolis American Indian Center, where I was hired originally as just a way for children to stay connected culturally, but also, of course, as I mentioned, all of my activities are very well incorporated with the knowledge behind physical activity and aerobics, and so that hand in hand literally became my forte here in the communities, where people come to me, they want to find a nice connected way through our powwow or indigenous ways to be able to stay fit, stay active, stay healthy. And that's exactly what I provide them, is just a simple tool, the instrument, the knowledge, the know-how, and also maybe just a companion to help them get through those times and be able to do that kind of a thing. And so making community definitely is something that I feel driven towards, because when I first started this, I wasn't necessarily in it for fame or for money. In reality, when I first started dancing, the reason my mother got us involved in with powwow, and then also hereafter hoop dance, was that the potential for a dancer to grab attention and to be able to hold the room long enough for you to take a moment after and at least give us a talk or a teaching, a lesson, an education, or sharing a little bit about yourself. Particularly because that was something that I had grown up with, was the discrimination during holiday seasons, particularly Thanksgiving, where the stereotypes of Native American people would come out, and I would get picked on and I would get bullied. And my mom found out the best way for me to fight that was actually just to educate them. So that was what dance did. What hoop dance really did was a way for me to enlighten people, in order for me to share who I am, in order for me to feel fulfilled in who I am without doubting, my presence and my value and my validity in the world. And that's very important, because one of the very teachings of hoop dance is that while we are all individuals, we are all also undeniably a part of each other's world. And so that's something that you may take home with you, is that no matter how big or how small you are, you cannot deny the fact that you are a part of this world, and we are a part of each other's world. And so that's where, for me, the fulfillment definitely comes from. I feel good doing it, period. If there's nobody watching, I would still do it, because that's what makes me feel good. And of course, now that there is the means to see others, I can teach others the same thing. Same thing as like fishing, and you can buy a man a fish, or you can teach a man to fish, and which one would you rather do? And for me, I see the fulfillment. I see the spark that happens in a young student's eyes when they achieve something, and they put their mind to it and they achieve it, and they are enlightened, they're enthralled, they're like, man, I want to do this more, I want to see what I can do, and I want to take this further. That's exactly what I believe we are all here for, is to be able to uphold and carry this knowledge into the next generation, and hopefully they can use it in a way that it's beneficial not only for themselves, but also for the future of all Earth kind, not just humans, but Earth kind in general.
Can you tell us a little bit about the derivation of the hoop dance? Is it something that's done by different tribes, different traditions, or is it very specific?
Yeah. We could be here all evening. No. But particularly where I live right now, I'm in Minneapolis, which is occupied territory, which is formerly Dakota and Anishinaabe. And both of these cultures here, these peoples have stories about hoop dance that go back to time immemorial. All right. So just a little bit of context. Hula hoop was invented in like the 1940s or 50s by this guy from here in the States, who had never actually been to the island of Hawaii. And so that's where, people think, oh, how long has hoop dance been around? Like, oh, it's been around a lot longer than we realize. But even at that, the first time that hoop dance from an indigenous being in this modern context was recorded was in the 1930s. His name is Tony Whitecloud, and he was Jemez Pueblo. And so again, he was from the Pueblos down in Southwest, and they have their own origin stories. They have their own story that goes along with that. And as I mentioned here, Anishinaabe people have one, Dakota people have a story about it, and even my people from Iroquois, or Seneca people of upstate New York, we have games where we would use these hoops as ways of teaching our kids, as a way to educate them, as a way for them to hone their skills and better themselves, so that they could be a part of the community and serve in whatever way that they could. So in that sense, just about every culture here in Turtle Island, more than 573 now federally recognized tribes, all have a story that also very well utilizes that circle. That hoop may not necessarily be directly tied to a dance, but it definitely has some type of connection and teaching that has very well overlapped and become a part of what is hoop dance today. And it is very, very, what's the word, diverse in its origins. Because again, where I might see a flying eagle, and I've done this in my teaching, in my classes, my workshops. Like I'll show them a shape. I'll say, "What do you see?" And we all come from different perspectives. We all have different stories and understandings. And so when I hold up my wings, I'm thinking bird. This kid says, "That's a bat." It's like, well, you're not wrong, like, and I see what you're saying, I can understand that. And so I think in that moment, of course, there's a moment right in that pivot where we start to realize, hey, yeah, actually that is something that you can see from another dimension, and you can have another understanding of it. And of course, not to say that he was wrong or I was wrong, but again, just giving an appreciation for each perspective.
I mean, that's the great art, wouldn't you say, Jonathan, when people can see it, feel it, and it reaches them in whatever ways they need at that time. And that's transformation right there. And I know you're going to be showing a clip of Micco doing the hoop dance that has come from his mom, which came from the beginning of time. And I love the imagery of the interconnected circles. In a way, I feel like that a lot about Dancing Earth, because it began in 2004 with a solo invitation. That's one hoop, solo invitation from me. And as you can see, Jonathan, there's so much, that each person can bring. And for me, it's been my honor and my service to make space for others. So, Micco comes in with this whole beautiful worldview from his mother, and another from his father, who was a great actor, a great, inspiration to many people. And bringing the Muskogee, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but bringing that teaching. And every dancer we've had is coming from sometimes multiple First Nations, different Indigenous heritage. So we're all coming with these, different worldviews, and then coming together in this creation process that allows people to come in fully as who they are culturally, or choosing what to share, what not to share. And, I see that in those formations, which you'll be seeing on camera, in a performance very soon. And I just give thanks for being able to have such incredible people in my life, as collaborators, and to be able to make space for people like Micco to be on stages across the world, and his wonderful colleagues. There's probably 100 that I wanted to have here on the call with us, but Jonathan, you're like, I think let's go with one so we can keep the conversation focused, because I'm always trying to include. So,
but I just, we're all living through the pandemic. We've been closed down, we've been sequestered, we've been quarantined, we've been socially distanced, but these kind of opportunities, it's like, I feel like I'm re-inspired, ready to, learn and open up my heart and my mind to new things. And I know that our audience is as well, because we've done over 1,000 programs since March 27th, Battery Dance. And now we're the dance diplomacy, which went around the world, to Asia, to Africa, to Europe, to Latin America, is now really focusing on you and what you bring to the rest of us. And it's like pulling aside the curtain and understanding what goes into a career in dance for Rulan, for Micco, for Dancing Earth. And I think this is a good segue to actually go to the recording of Micco doing hoop dance. Would you want to introduce it in any other way, Micco? Is there a title? Is there this clip would be from where, or anything you want to add to it before we see it?
I guess off the top of my head, I have two videos that I would definitely share with you, and it's up to you which one you want to show. One of them is a project that I had done just in this past year because of the COVID and social isolation, which was lovely for me as an introvert, but definitely because I think as artists, we're always hesitant to necessarily share our work because we're sensitive about it. This is my baby, this is my child, so. But I actually got out there in the city, and I made a video that was me just literally an urban native dancing all over throughout the city. And then also I had done another one that was more nature connected. So I'm looking at melding the two, but I'll share with you the one that was with the city. But it was a really, really fun project because I think that's something that I definitely love to see, is the juxtaposition of where we are today. meaning as an indigenous person, I'm still alive, I'm still here, I'm just existing in this crazy world that's on top of my land. And so for me to kind of put it in that juxtaposition, I think is something that's kind of beautiful, because it also speaks to some of the things, the issues that we face as far as urbanization, of poverty, of the violence and things that comes along with colonization. And so some of those elements are in there as well. And then the other video clip that I would share with you guys is actually the solo piece that Rulan helped me choreograph during one of the summer intensives for Dancing Earth. And it's a contemporary, usually in hoop dance, you see a traditional context story about how things are connected and how things are all made from the same pieces, literally. And so this piece that you see is about a modern story, and it depicts where we are today in this modern time, where it seems there's a lot of chaos going on, a lot of unbalance happening. And of course, in our teachings, in our cultures, from Haudenosaunee people, we see the Hadiwenyo Danjens, which means the thunder beings. We recognize them, we honor them, we revere them, and we appreciate their gifts that they bring to the world, not only as water nurtures life, but also the potential to recognize when the world is unbalanced, when there is too much clutter, and that lightning that strikes from the thunderstorm will also cause the earth to raise, to burn to the ground, right back down to its most simple element pieces. And then from that, those pieces will build the next generation of plants, of life, of the cycle of world, of the cycle of life that happens here on Earth. And so that's exactly what's going to be seen in the second clip, or whichever.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I would see them both. And Micco, it's awesome to see you emerging as a filmmaker and a musician and a dancer, you know, a constant creator in every form, whether it's cooking or caretaking for the earth. And but with film, you honor the legacy of your father, you know, an incredible actor, Will Sampson, probably the first Native superstar actor, and you know, someone who we feel a presence when we have our circles before performance. And you know, I just recognize that with his legacy, I mean, you know, Jonathan, I'm always going to love live performance more than anything, but his father's a reminder of how film allows stories to live on forever. So I really look forward to seeing this film clip of this choreography, Micco.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely something I loved, is that he helped me realize, this was something that he said when he was a kid, like way back in the 1930s. He was like 5 years old, and he told his grandmother, or his mom, or my grandma, that he was going to live forever. And that was a far-fetched idea, right? And we all just kind of laughed at that. But lo and behold, he figured out that if you make it to a big enough film, you very well might be just exist forever in the movie realm, in the stars, if you will.
As opposed to the very transitory nature of live dance performance.
Yeah. So I think that was something
beautiful about that also.
Right. I mean, even for me, especially as from my experience, I didn't get to grow up with him, but that ephemeral moment left an impact undeniably on the people that he interacted with. And of course, that is something that is constantly impacting people. So that's an interesting dynamic to our performance, or if you will. And my dad was the kind of guy that he would only do one take. So that is pretty like live, like just on the spot. He wouldn't mess around. He's like, you tell me when you're ready, because me and my horse, we don't mess around. We do one take.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for enriching this conversation. And you've left me with a lot of excitement and appetite to see the clip, but also to stay in touch with you and to see your next chapters, whatever they may be. So thank you for joining us here on Battery Dance's Dance Diplomacy. Rulan, thank you for the wonderful introduction to Micco, and let's sit and dance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you, Rulan.
Thank you, guys. Weaving together.
pound of the wheels drumming in my brain. My dash is dusty, my plates are expired. Please, Mr. Officer, let me explain. I got to make it to a powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. Got my T-bird in the glove box, I ain't got no spare. Got a feather from an eagle, I ain't got no care. The road is empty in my bottle of desire. Daylight is breaking, the sun touches fire. I got to make another powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. Car is dented, the radiator steams. One headlight don't work, the radio can scream. I got a sticker that says Indian Power. I stuck it on a bumper, that's what holds my car together. We're on a circuit of an Indian dream. We don't get old, we just get younger. When we're flying down the highway, riding in our Indian car. We're on a circuit of